Okay, so obviously you've talked quite a bit about how you handle cases. Now, I think it's fair to say not everybody shares your passion for justice and getting people the correct amount of compensation that they deserve. So let's just say you have someone that is currently being represented by another firm, and they've already they've signed the contract or whatever the paperwork is, and they're not happy with their personal injury lawyer. Let's say it's taken forever. Let's say that they're just giving them bad advice. You get kind of a feeling like, I don't know if this guy has my best interest or gal, best interest in mind. Can a person, and this is a ChatGPT because, again, we're comparing things. So I would like your general information, but I'd also like.
Can you fire your lawyer?
Can you fire? Well, let's keep it specific to personal injury lawyer, or if you want to go on a tangent with your answer.
You tell me the question. Give me ChatGPTs and let me see.
We asked ChatGPT.
Yes.
Can I fire my personal injury lawyer and hire you instead?
Did they say not if it's burger law?
No, not yet.
All right, go ahead.
We haven't got that far.
I interrupted, sorry.
The firm I hired rarely communicates with me, and I get the feeling my claim isn't important to them. We'll get into that. I'm sure you have some cases where people have came to you. So let's talk about their answer first.
Go ahead.
So this is in the voice of a personal injury attorney, so we could get a good answer from them. As an experienced personal injury attorney, I understand that communication is key to any successful attorney-client relationship. If you're not satisfied with the level of communication and attention you are receiving from your current law firm, you have the right to terminate your relationship with them and seek representation elsewhere. However, before making any decisions, it's important to carefully evaluate your current situation and ensure that switching attorneys is the best course of action. If you do decide to seek new representation, I'd be happy to discuss your case and evaluate whether I can provide the legal assistance that you need. It's interesting how it did a generality and then it got personal.
It got personal, and I'd give it a C.
Okay.
I'd give it a C. Again, what ChatGPT said is not inaccurate. It's not wrong, but the reality is when someone is driven to the point of having to call another lawyer behind their other lawyer's back, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's usually highly stressful to them. And every single time I get a call like that, that person has called their current lawyer 20 times and can't get a phone call back. And they're really at the end of the rope. I mean, we get cases where the case is 4 years old and stuff. So the things that I would add to that answer are, so it's correct. But the things that I would add to that answer are that, well, if it's soon in the claim, don't fire your lawyer. Give them a chance. Every time I get a call like that, I say, who's your lawyer? And then I go, how long it's been? And if it's been 2 months and these people, you're not being very fair to your lawyer. Stick with your lawyer. And then if it's a lawyer I know, I'll say, stick with your lawyer. He's a good guy. If it's anyway. But you also, like any other, there are good SEO companies and there are mediocre SEO companies. There are good plaintiff personal injury lawyers and there are mediocre plaintiff personal injury lawyers. Or there's also lawyers that are mostly real estate lawyers and do a little PI on the side. They don't know it like we know it, right? So there you go. So the things to look for is how long your claim is and are they communicating? So I sit on some ethics committees because I also give service to the bar and try to improve lawyers' reputations. The two most complaints of ethics rule violations for lawyers, like 85% in only two rules, diligence and communication. How quickly they're working on your case and how well they're communicating to you. So that's what we look at. How are they communicating? We had one the other day. I've been emailing them every day, and they showed me the emails. They're ignoring the lady. And I'm like, well, you know what? I'm sorry, but yeah, I would fire him too, because why are you going to pay that guy to ignore you? It's kind of insulting, you know? And then the other thing is diligence. We talked about in one of our other questions, we talked about stale claims. Well, it's important to go out, take the pictures of the skid marks and do these other things, but you also got to go write the letter to the claim rep. You got to file suit. You can't, just because if a statute of limitations is 5 years generally for personal injury, I mean, I've never had a case older than 2 years in my firm where the lawsuit's not on file. I don't care what's happened. I don't care if they're still treating. Sometimes it's sooner than that. So you got to, justice delayed is justice denied, right? And so if someone's with a lawyer and they're not doing shit for a long time, get rid of him and go to someone else. Now, the good thing ChatGPT said is think about it before you do, because there are consequences to leaving a lawyer, because you are breaching a contract. You're terminated a contract. You cut a deal with that other lawyer. You may have good reason to, but that's what you're doing. You're breaching a contract, and you have obligations to that. That other lawyer may try to get part of a fee from you. Now, if they have any pride, they wouldn't. But I fight that for them. So when we get a call like that, we if it's unfair to the other lawyer, we say stay with your other lawyer. I don't care if it's you got to be fair. You got to have respect to my peers, and I do. There's a lot of good lawyers out there, and maybe the client was having a bad day. Maybe they really like their lawyer, but they're just having everybody has a bad day. So we look at that. We look at the lawyer. We do that, and we'll say, well, listen, you got to fire him first, and if you fire him, come and bring your file. Look at it, because you also don't know why is it hung up. Blah blah blah. I get the calls too where they'll say, I want to fire my lawyer. Why? Well, he only got me $100,000. I'm like, what? And you say, well, and then I say, well, listen, there's only $100,000 to get, and that's a pretty good settlement. And I know that lawyer's a good, hardworking lawyer. She's a great lawyer. You should maybe take that. So that happens. And just to bring it home a little bit, but if you have a case where you've been sitting around for a long time and you're not getting any money, you feel that the lawyer isn't returning your calls, they're disorganized or unprepared, they don't seem to understand your case, they're not listening to what you want, you feel like you're talking to a brick wall, that's not good. And I wrote some of these down because we have this on our website. Or what if they engage in some unethical behavior? What if they committed legal malpractice? What if they blew the statute of limitations and said, your case is 7 years old and I didn't do anything? Or a lack of dedication, or you don't think they're going to get it done, or they're trying to take the easy money. Let's say you got $100,000 case, and the lawyer's saying, take 20 grand, take 20 grand, take 20 grand. And, the hard money is getting it from 20 grand to 100. It's easy to get 20 grand offered in a 100 grand case. It's hard to get them from 20 to 100. And you got to file suit, do litigation, blah, blah, blah. All the things we do every day in my firm.
Well, and we had talked about too, like how important it is in the very first couple of months to make sure everything is being done. If they're not, I would agree and disagree with a couple different parts. Maybe just from let's say a potential client's standpoint versus a lawyer, I would say, those first couple months would be critical. And if they're not doing all the things they do in those first couple months, it's like, well, this is evidence being left on the table, as you had said. So I would say it's, I'm not disagreeing outright, but I would say, I think generally speaking, you would know pretty quick if somebody's worth their salt. You go through 3 or 4, 5, 6 months, and it's like you're sending, like you said, 8 emails, and it's like, seriously? At some point, and then 8 months in, maybe they don't have those skid marks there, they don't have the witness testimony, they don't have the recordings. That might be something where it presents a problem.
Yeah, no, that does. And if the lawyer's not getting that evidence, that's a big, big problem. But on the other hand, too, you want to make sure that the client isn't jumping ship too quick. You got to give that lawyer a little bit of a, and sometimes, the other thing I'll do is I'll say, can I call that lawyer for you? And I'll call the lawyer and say, what are you doing, man? Yeah. And they'll say, oh, shoot, I forgot it, or I didn't do anything. Or listen, Gary, can you take this case for me? And we'll co-counsel, we'll work something out, but I don't have the bandwidth to do it. I thought I did, but I didn't. Sometimes, but yeah, you can lose evidence of omission, and I've had it happen. I mean, I've been like, oh man, this case would have been made. These some of these times they write over the security footage, and then you don't have the video, and you can't prove the case.
So that does lead me to another question, because you had talked a couple of different times about maybe they don't have the experience. They're good lawyers, but maybe it's something they don't specialize in. So you said like real estate lawyers that take personal injury cases, et cetera. What's the unique advantage? Because there's a lot of general practice firms, specifically, when you go out further into rural areas, the population's lower. So it's like you got this lawyer doing real estate, work comp, PI, family law. What's one of the advantages of having a firm that only does PI, car accidents, truck accidents, and the like? What's a unique advantage that your firm or another personal injury firm would have over a law firm like that?
Well, it's never our first rodeo. We've done it before. We also work to hone our talents in that area. We know all the traps. We know where they're laid. We know what the tricks are going to be. We know how to navigate the case through all the traps that are going to be laid before they're ever laid, before you even know. We'll tell you what to do and what not to do. We'll tell you what insurance to use in this. We'll identify the right insurance companies. There's so many things, Dave. It's even hard to answer because are you getting all the insurance? Are you figuring out all the parties? Are you getting all the evidence from the get-go? Are you getting the video? Are you coordinating the right treatment with your client, or make sure they're getting to the right doctors, dealing with their personal health insurance? Are you notifying their own insurance companies in case there's a problem with insurance later, or too little insurance for underinsured or uninsured or other things? When you're settling a case, are you finding all the policies? Are you making them do an affidavit, or are you filing suit to make sure that's all the insurance? Or are you just trusting that there's only 25 grand? Is there really $1 million umbrella? Are you believing the line of the storyline from the defendant, how it was all the plaintiff's fault? No, it wasn't. The plaintiff reacted in seconds the best way that they could, and this truck driver drove for 3 weeks without marking, without doing anything as logs, or the store owner had that hole in their property for years before that. And there's just a lot of things we do that only a personal injury lawyer knows. And then ultimately, your value in the case comes from your right to a jury trial. And the advocate for the personal injury lawyer has got to be someone who can go and try a case and land these planes, land these cases, and get the money, meaning get verdicts. Do they try cases? Do they try cases like this? This is not their first time. We try cases. We go to court and we get it if the insurance company won't voluntarily pay. So, and that gives us, and I've lost cases too. If I've ever lost a case, I increase the value of all my other cases because they know I go and try the hard cases, and we do. So there's a huge amount of, there's a lot of reasons why to go with a personal injury lawyer.
Versus a general firm.
Versus a general lawyer, yeah. And I get calls and I do CLEs and I help general lawyers all the time when they have questions. And negotiate liens. Once you settle the case, how are you going to negotiate the liens? How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you make sure that when the person gets the money in their pocket, they're not going to have bill collectors after them down the line? The case is really over. What about the release? What if you have multiple parties as a defendant? What if you have multiple plaintiffs and a limited pot to go after? What if there's a lot of what ifs. I've been doing this for 30 years. You think no case is the same. Every case, you must have this with SEO problems and stuff. Yeah. There's no cookie. You think if you could just cookie cutter this and everything would be the same, and you could sit back on your couch, I could see, and the problems and the marketing things you and I have surmounted because things change over time. That's the other thing with not a PI lawyer. What about the latest tort reform? What about this provision in the insurance company? What about the latest case that says they can't do this? There's a whole host of stuff.
Well, it's interesting, too, because you had mentioned like the other cases. It's like, well, in movies you hear this a lot. They go in the courtroom. It's like, oh, and this versus this, there's this unique clause or whatever that was created for that unique case. And I would think if you're more in tune with that industry specifically versus all-encompassing, you'd be aware of those.
On the drive over here, I was talking to a SLU law professor and giving him advice on settling a case, and I was quoting law to him about a weird immunity issue that I knew, and we talk about that all the time. And lawyers share that, and I'm on the listservs. I spend a lot of time honing my legal talent. So I sit there and work on myself. You think, you're in your 50s, you don't have to work on yourself anymore. You do, So I work on my legal talent. We do seminars, I give speeches, I work on trials, I do all kinds of stuff to make my razor's edge as sharp as it can be when I'm fighting the other side.
Well, I've noticed that too, like even at my own age, I'm not as old as you, but as a younger man, it almost becomes, it's more exciting to learn more things, but it's also more difficult because you have more to sift through. It's like you have more, it's like, okay, well, if I had 50 different tangents or options on this thing, well, as you gain 5 years, 10 years, okay, now I have 100 different things that I'll have to collaborate to make this idea.
And let me add something that people don't realize is the simplest case wins. So when you have this case and all these facts, when you have experience, like this, you know what's important and what's not. It's like that Nate Silver book, The Signal from the Noise. I mean, it's or dealing with you gotta pick what's important, because you can't put on everything. The jury will be bored to tears. And the other thing is, you need to know what pressure points are on the other side to push to get them to pay the money. And I know that. I do it all the time. Do it every day. And I tell them, you're the lawyer. Here's what I'm going to go do. Tell me when you're ready to pay me.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, cool.